How's it going? Obviously, Sean talked a little bit about bringing in Darron Lee, the linebacker. Can you just are you familiar with him at all? Do you know anything about what he may bring? Obviously, added him to the practice squad. He's got to get up to speed, but anything about him that you can share?
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about him, Matt. We worked him out while we were in training camp, and he moved around really well. I know he was a really good player coming out of Ohio State. I haven't really followed his career, but in his workout, liked his movement, seemed to have a pretty good football IQ, and seemed like he'd fit in well with our guys. The biggest thing was watching his movement and some of the drills that we put him through, and the way he handled himself. He seemed like he was a pretty good athlete.
And, adding a linebacker, and I know there's a lot of stuff out there right now around the trade deadline. I mean, you've been around this game a long time. You know how that whole thing happens. Linebacker play in general. You've had two guys that have been banged up. You've asked, AJ Klein to play a pretty big role, to fill in. How do you feel like he's done? Because I sense that there's been some frustration with, maybe a lack of level of play for AJ so far.
Yeah, we put a lot on AJ's plate. Fortunate for us, he's a veteran guy who's been in our league for a while and had to play multiple positions. And, we put him in that role. He's had to play both outside linebacker for us. And then yesterday when Tremaine came out of the game, he ended up having to play some middle linebacker for us. So he gives us some versatility that we really need at certain times. And he's doing some good things. There's some things he'd like to be able to do a little bit better. But for the roles that we put him in, I think he's done a fairly good job for us throughout most of the time he's been out there.
Awesome. Thanks, Leslie.
Well,
hey, Leslie, always appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time here.
No problem.
I ask you the same question I asked Sean, basically, but from a defensive coordinator standpoint, the punch out. Josh, when he did it in Vegas, you get Justin Zimmer. I know that there's a connection between Peanut Tillman and Coach McDermott going back to Carolina. He had him come in 2017 to kind of work and talk to the team a little bit. But I'm interested more of like a coaching technique and a standpoint of, like how much you spend on that and how much the game has changed over the years to actually teach that as a technique.
Oh, we emphasize it, Sal, all the time. I mean, it's something we work on in practice. We preach it in practice, and we work on it. So it's not a coincidence that it's happening in games, but if you watch our tape, our guys are generally going after the football, and we really believe, and we know statistically, if you can take the football away, if you can finish plus in the turnover differential, your odds of winning go way, way up. So we're always emphasizing it, and we continue to work on it. And fortunate for us, our guys are buying into it, and you see them going after the football, and none bigger than the one that we got yesterday from Justin, but it's something we talk about and we work on all the time.
How much do you have to be careful of teaching it and wanting to do it, but also making sure you wrap up when you get there sometimes too? There's got to be that delicate balance.
You're right. I mean, that's something that you have to weigh, and we emphasize, making sure that we make the tackle, and then maybe the next guy coming in, you're the guy that gets the chance to get the punch. And there are other times where, the ball is out there and you have a chance to get a punch, go for it. But for sure, secure the tackle first.
Thanks, Coach.
You're welcome.
Hey, Leslie, what have you seen in the defense this year that makes you think they can go up against Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, just the Seahawks weapons that they have, and do a good job of limiting them to what they've been able to do? I think averaging about 4 touchdowns a game so far this season.
Yeah, Matt, they're on a roll. I mean, 34 points a game is nothing to sneeze at. So they're finding ways to put points on the board, and they're racking up over 400 yards of offense. So they've got it going, and we're going to have our hands full trying to slow them down. I mean, they're putting up points and moving the football up and down the field and controlling the clock as well. So we'll have a work cut out for us, but we feel like we're going to find a way to rise to the task.
Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Hey, Leslie, it's John Scott here. I just want to ask you almost like a philosophical thing. What's the ripple effect with the rest of the defense when you have a guy at the one tech, a space eater who takes on those 2 blocks? What's the ripple effect when you have someone effective at that role for everyone else on the defense?
Man, when you do have a guy who can take up those two blocks and is able to hold his ground and not get pushed back into the linebackers, well, it makes your linebackers more effective, and it makes your run defense more effective as well, because those linebackers are generally, working free at times because of the fact that that guy is able to hold a double team, and when those linebackers do get the double team off of him, he ends up making those plays that you want to see the nose tackle make. So if you have a guy like that who's stout enough to get it done, it should improve your run defense. And if he has a little pass rush ability, even better. But for sure, it should improve your run defense.
Obviously, we know Starr isn't there. Are you still searching for that role or someone to be the most effective in that role?
It doesn't show up statistically in yesterday's game, but I really thought that Harrison Phillips coming in yesterday gave us something inside. There were a few plays where he did a really good job on some of those double teams, and even when the ball was going away from him, chasing the football down and making some plays for us. So, it's something we got to continue to work with the guys that are on our roster to be factors for us when people want to try to run the ball as much as a team like New England, which is their forte, to run the football on offense. When they come in and want to do that, you need your interior to really be stout. And I think at times we got that yesterday, even though the numbers won't necessarily say it.
And I know last one here, it really jumped out. Harrison went from inactive for multiple weeks to more snaps than anyone on that defensive line. Was that just because it was such a ground and pound, or how does a guy make that much of a jump from not playing to playing more than anyone up front?
Well, some of it was due to his effectiveness and the way he played. That first half, I think maybe they finished with 44 yards in the half, and then they really got it going that second half. But, Harrison has always been capable. Coming off that knee injury, definitely slowed him early on. But he's gotten stronger, John, and he's improving. And credit to him that, even though he wasn't active in the prior weeks, he was still working at his craft. He was still getting himself ready to go out and perform. And when he got his opportunity, he earned those other snaps that he got. So just kudos to Harrison for his preparation. And then when he got his opportunity, stepping up and making some plays for us.
Thanks, Leslie.
You will.
Leslie, John Warrow.
Hey, John, how you doing?
Oh, good. Okay, this thing's working because it didn't work for Dable, but great. I hear you. This Russell Wilson's not bad. You've already faced Patrick Mahomes. I mean, what are the similarities, or how do you prepare for a guy like this who's even playing better than maybe Mahomes is right now?
Yeah, that's a scary thought because Patrick Mahomes is pretty impressive. But Russell's off to a great start. He's off to an MVP type season, and he's definitely one of the premier quarterbacks in our league. And we'll have to find ways to corral him and slow him down. He does a great job of moving in the pocket, similar to Patrick, and making plays outside the pocket as well as in the pocket. So he presents a lot of problems to defenses, and we got to find ways just to slow this offense down in general.
The other topic I wanted to ask you about, and I know you answered a lot of questions about Jerry Hughes in the past, but what were your first impressions of Jerry? I mean, he can make a frightening first impression in some ways.
You mean when we first arrived in 17?
Yeah, when you first arrived here. Did you have any preconceptions of him?
Not in their preconceptions. I did wonder back then, being a former first-round pick, why his tenure was so short with the team that drafted him. I did wonder that. And then, people sit down with us when we arrived as a staff, and they gave us a history on each player, a prior history. And so you want to go into it with a clean slate and not allow the past to interfere with what you're trying to get accomplished, being a new staff. And that's the way I approached my relationship with Jerry when we first got a chance to meet back in 2017 and sit down and talk. Just a clean slate, and this is what our expectations are. And I just wanted to hear a little bit from him at the time, how he saw things with the new staff coming in. And, we'll get off to a good start, and our relationship has been good throughout. And, we've had our moments. I'm not going to lie to you. We've had our moments at times, but we've had to talk early on, but we're way past that now. Jerry he's become a tremendous leader for us in 2020. And, he's always been a really good football player. I mean, he's the one guy on our defensive line as a rusher throughout our time here, people have had to pay attention to him, whether they chip him with a running back or tight end. That's always been the case, always been really good. But the fact that he stepped up so much from a leadership role, John, that's what's been really impressive about Jerry in 2020. And we need it. We needed it. We need it now. We'll need it going forward.
Because that's the thing with Jerry. It's like you have to understand where he's coming from and who he is and accept him for who he is, and that there are going to be those rough spots, but he doesn't take it personally in that sense. It's just him being him. And that's where you have to become acceptant to a certain degree of who he is.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I mean, his intentions are very good. And as long as you understand that and know that, you can work through all those other things. And Jerry has been tremendous for us in every phase. On the field and the way he plays, I mean, nobody plays harder. Nobody practices harder. I mean, he's what you want. I mean, everybody's not going to be perfect in all ways. But for what we're trying to get accomplished, he fits what we're looking for in a football player on the Buffalo Bills defense.
Because, and I'm sorry to my colleagues for belaboring this, but when a guy like Kyle Williams, who got to know Jerry, over the years, when he can upset, you know what a professional and what a leader Kyle is. When a guy like that can say, "Oh, that's just Jerry being Jerry," you have to respect, that point of view and know that there's more there to Jerry Hughes than just that Gary personality in some ways.
Now, Jerry Hughes is, as I mentioned, just a very, very good football player, good teammate. I mean, you talk with his teammates, John, they love him, they respect him, not just for how hard he plays and how productive he's been, but for who he is in the locker room, the way he handles himself with his teammates. And that goes a long way. I mean, you can be a good player and your teammates really don't like being around you. That's not Jerry. They love being around him. He's been really good for us.
Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Hey, Leslie, I just have one more quick follow-up on Seattle. Watching DK Metcalf, I mean, it's really hard to, find a guy or another player to compare him to because he's a really special talent. And I'm wondering, how do you prepare for a guy like this who has such a unique skill set? And when Tre'Davious is asked, to handle that assignment in this game, what does he do well that might match up well against DK?
Well, I'm sure that they're running their scouting reports on Tre'Davious as well, so I don't want to talk too much about that one-on-one matchup and how we'll go about it. But DK had a tremendous game on yesterday. I mean, a breakout game. Anytime you come away with 12 receptions, over 160 yards, I mean, 2 touchdowns, that's an impressive day, at any point. And be in your second year, and I think it's his second season in the National Football League, just quite an accomplishment, and the sky's the limit for him. So we have much respect for him, and we're going to have our hands full trying to limit his production. He's a rising talent for sure.
Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Hey, Leslie, one real quick for you. We saw Matt Milano still is on this pitch count. Is that something that you anticipate continuing on, and how challenging is it to have to work him in and out and basically play a third of the snaps?
Yeah, it's tough because Matt's such a big part of our success as a defense, and the fact that he's recovering from this injury, and we're trying to make sure that we don't do anything to make it worse than it is by putting him on a pitch count. It's tough for him and, tough for his teammates, but it's the wise thing to do at this point. And we were talking about it earlier today, and, we'll learn more about how we'll approach this next ball game. But the fact that he's out there, it does help us, even though he's in a limited role, and we'll just see what happens as the week goes on and we get ready for this next opponent.